What is up, everyone? I'm Ryan from Fireside Knicks with my friend and co-host Dylan Backer, and the Knicks dropped game one of a pretty big series for the Knicks. Obviously, it's the postseason, but I felt like these two games were huge for the Knicks because they had home court advantage, and if you were the Miami Heat, you just needed to grab one of these games, and now they have one with a chance to take two. Obviously, if the Knicks were to go down 2-0 heading to Miami, that would be nightmare situation. But if the Knicks can rebound and grab a game in game two, now you even it out a little bit, and now you just got to go into Miami and take care of business, which they've shown they can do in the past. But one of the big themes from that game, from last night's game, was the shooting, right? Not just the free throw line where they shot 60% on 20 attempts, but from three, 7 for 34. I felt like when I was watching that game, I felt like I could not trust them to hit an open shot. You feel like you're not going to repeat a performance like that, but when we were talking about this Miami series, we mentioned, you can hold the Cavs to under 100 points. You can score 101 points and beat that team. Miami, you can't necessarily do that. Jimmy Butler is way too good to do that for. They are a much more polished postseason team. That team just took down the Milwaukee Bucks. They feel pretty invincible right now. They're not a team that's questioning their confidence. You mentioned this with the comments when we talked about that series and the preview for the Miami series, that, the Cavs sounded just like defeated. We couldn't handle the lights were brighter than we expected. They seemed either A, unprepared for the postseason, or B, just not ready to handle it. There are no questions about whether this Miami team is ready to handle the postseason. They've been in underdogs before. Eric Spoelstra was very, very aware of how good this Knicks team is, and he had a great defense. He knew that this team was going to be a tough offensive and defensive assignment. And we have our work cut out for us. Miami's not going to be a pushover. I know we expected that, but this is now a must win in game two. But before we talk about game two, we're going to talk about game one. Dylan, what were your takeaways from that game? What did you feel like the Knicks did well? What did you feel like obviously they did poorly? Let's get into that.
Right. First off, I guess we'll start with what they did well. They were finishing in the paint pretty well. I don't have the specific stats in front of me, but just watching the game, you could see they were scoring in the paint very well. I did see a stat this morning that said Jalen Brunson was 10 of 13 in shots inside the paint. That's very good to see. RJ Barrett was doing his thing too from inside the paint. They were doing good in that regard. But I think everyone knows that they just completely flat out stunk from 3-point line. They were 7 of 34 from 3. That's never ideal in any game, nevertheless a playoff game. And looking at this, the only Knick that made multiple 3-pointers was Obi Toppin, who started that game in place of an injured Julius Randle. He went 4 for 11, which is 36% from 3. That's not like phenomenal, but that's also, given how bad everyone else shot, that's an acceptable shooting performance. Looking up and down this stat sheet, there's just bricks all over the place. RJ Barrett was 1 for 5 from 3. Jalen Brunson was 0 for 7 from 3. Josh Hart was 0 for 4 from 3. Manuel Quickley was 1 for 4 from 3. Quentin Grimes was 1 for 3 from 3. It was not pretty. It was very, very rough to see. The shooting was just not there. And like I said before, the third quarter was really what killed us. Looking at this here right here, the Knicks were in control the first half. They exited the first quarter up 32-21. They had a really good first quarter. It felt like, they weren't shooting well, but they were making their inside shots. Second quarter, they ended the half up by 5. Miami had a good second quarter, but you were hoping maybe a clean second half would, get you that win. Completely unraveled from there. Third quarter, they get outscored 31-20. Big shots were hit by like Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler, Gabe Vincent. They just fell apart from there. Fourth quarter, they started to come back a little bit. They cut it to within 3, and then a key missed rebound from Mitch really, really ruined it because he looked like he had the rebound, got poked out of his hands, and then about 5 seconds later, Gabe Vincent hit a 3 to put Miami back up 6, and you kind of just felt like after that you missed your chance. That's over. Miami's gonna end up taking that game, and sure enough, Miami would go on to win that game. And looking at the stat sheet here as well, Jimmy Butler had 25, 11, and 4, which is a really good game, but you don't really feel like he killed you in a sense, like how he's been doing all these playoffs and what he did against the Bucks. You feel like you held him down to a good enough degree to win the game. You know what I mean? 25 points is a lot. Don't get me wrong, but he didn't drop 40. So, you felt like you did what you were supposed to do to limit him. Sure enough, they weren't able to still win because, they just did not guard the 3-ball very well. Miami went 33% from 3, which is not fantastic, but clearly it was enough for them to win the game. Gabe Vincent went 5 of 12 from 3, and quite frankly, he hit like 3 or 4 of those in the first 5 minutes of the game. You can't let that happen. You can't let that happen. You cannot let him go off like that, especially in the playoffs. You just can't do it. Kyle Lowry also went 3 of 6 from 3 with 18 points off the bench. That's another thing you can't do. You can't let those small guards do that to you. When your whole like thing as a Knicks team here is defense, and you have guys that you're supposed to be able to match up with these guys pretty well, and you're letting up 3-pointers like that, you can't let that happen. You just can't. It was not a pretty display really on either side of the ball. Quite frankly, they looked like they did good in the first half, and it just looked completely dismantled in the second half. It was a very rough game. Obviously, they didn't have Julius Randle. That's a key miss. They need him. Clearly, they need him. They were missing that big time. You know what I mean? So hopefully, he's ready for game 2. But those are some of my takeaways on game 1. Ryan? What is your biggest takeaway really from game 1? Obviously there was a 3-point shooting, but was there something else really that stood out to you in game 1, good or bad?
Yeah, I think one of the big things was just, I actually felt like they didn't, like you mentioned this with Jimmy Butler, I felt like they did enough defensively to win. I feel like if you hold an NBA team to 108 points, especially in today's landscape, you should win that game. The Knicks just didn't do enough offensively. 34 shot attempts from 3, and you make 7 of them. I don't feel like they're going to do that again. We talked about this in the Cavs series where it was like they didn't play their best basketball and still beat the Cavs, and you feel like at some point that 3-point shooting has to get better. I understand the postseason, it's tough for you to, reliably hit shots, but I feel like that typically happens in the paint. I feel like your 3-point shooting doesn't get that much worse in the postseason. I get it. Some guys are going to throw doubles. There's better defensive schemes. I get that. But as you mentioned, the Knicks were good in the paint. RJ Barrett, right? Like he got his, right? RJ Barrett's, whatever adjustment he's made in his offensive game plan has worked because he's scoring efficiently. He's doing it well. I'm very pleased with RJ Barrett's doing for this Knicks team. And I'm someone who was down on RJ Barrett after those first 2 games. I was like, what the hell do you do with this guy right now? Because he's hurting the team. And, end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and say that the Knicks are going to start shooting 50% from 3 or anything of the sort, but if they shot 33% from 3 like the Heat did, they win this game very handedly. They would have beaten the brakes off the Heat. And I'm not saying that because obviously if I was a Knicks fan hearing a Heat fan say that, I understand that the perception of that would be, oh, so you think that we're not that good. But the perception from that, for me, is the way I'm intending that to say that is that the Knicks didn't hit their shots. You can't change that. But if the Knicks can't hit their shots, I feel confident in this series. I still feel like the roster does not change game to game, right? That's one of the really nice things, right? One of the nice things about basketball and any sport is that game to game, unlike in the NFL where it's a one and done, right? You can lose one game and you can go out and you can bounce back the next day or in the next game, excuse me. They didn't have Julius Randle. I know Toppin, as you mentioned, hit some pretty big threes, but I feel like you do miss Julius Randle's presence. He is one of the best scorers on this team, and this team was really not finding it offensively. Randle is someone who's just not afraid to keep shooting. He is not afraid. He is never afraid to shoot. He's never afraid to take a big shot. He's never afraid to do that. He's never walked away from the big moment. You can say he's fallen short at times, but you can never say that he's passed up the opportunity to be the hero when given the chance. And I think that, having him back at some point in this series is going to be a big help. It's going to be a big lift for this offense. They need to win game 2, though. They absolutely 100% need to win game 2. And then if you go into Miami and you're able to take 2 of those 3 games, you would come back to New York with 2. You would come back to New York with 2 chances, really. I know it's not how the schedule works, but you would have 2 chances in New York to close out that series. And that's really how the way I view it is you take this game and then you go to Miami and take 2 out of 3. That's your game plan, right? Yeah, you take 2 out of 3 on the road and you're going to win this series. Obviously, you're no longer able to sweep at home. I guess if you win the next 3 games at home that you play in this series and you take one of those road games, you feel good. But I would prefer to I don't want this series to go to 7. I don't want to be in a game 7 with Jimmy Butler. I know that, again, he didn't kill us, but that is an assassin right there. He's cold-blooded. He's a killer. And when he smells blood in the waters, he will go out and he will hunt. But I talked about this with Quentin Grimes where I felt like he was an X factor because the Knicks, if they needed a couple of big threes here and there, he could give them that. He only played 10 minutes. Obviously, he's dealing with his shoulder stuff. And he only got to take 3 shots, all of them threes. You feel like, again, this game, you were a 3 or 2 away. You mentioned the Mitchell Robinson rebound. Let's say that Mitch comes down with that and that the Knicks go on the next possession to hit a three. I'm not saying they win the game, but that changes things, right? This is a momentum-oriented sport. You see teams go on 10-0 runs, and then the coach has, Knicks or Miami are going to have to call a timeout and try to stop the bleeding. When you do stuff like that, when you're able to go on those runs to put pressure on their defenses, you put pressure on the defense, you put pressure on the offense to come up with a big shot and to try to create a big shot. You kind of put pressure on the team to have to make quick decisions, and not everyone's capable of making quick decisions in the NBA. That's what separates superstar level players, star level players, good role players, rotation players, all that stuff. But looking ahead a little bit here in game 2, I know Randle's availability is a big question mark here, but who are you looking for to step up? Who are you looking for from this game 1, from guys who struggled in game 1 to have a bigger game in game 2, because they're going to need to win this game. It's a must win for me. I don't know if you agree with me there.
Right. So first off, game 2 is absolutely a must-win now at this point. You can't drop both games at home, especially when you have Madison Square Garden as your home court. You can't drop them both, not in the playoffs, because if you do, you're going to be buried so far deep. It's going to be such an uphill climb to win that series. You got to win game 2. You have to. You should have won game 1. You lost, so shake it off and win game 2. That's the way I see it. And for who I think should step up, I think it's Jalen Brunson. And you may think, Jalen Brunson had 25, 5, and 7 last game, though, in game 1. But he shot 0 for 7 from 3. You know what I mean? We need to see that 3-ball fall. And like you said, we mentioned last episode, in a previous episode, about how Quentin Grimes, if he's just hits 2 or 3 big threes, that makes a big difference. You can make that argument for almost anyone on this Knicks team at this point, because quite frankly, not a single Knicks player is shooting well from 3 this entire postseason. The team overall is shooting 26% from 3. That's not good. That's pretty bad, right? The fact that they won Cleveland in 5 games despite shooting that bad should either be a testament to either how bad Cleveland played or how well we played defensively. You could go either way with that one. But like I was saying, you could make that argument that just 2 or 3 big threes, that whole big thing, you can make that argument with anyone on this Knicks team at this point. I think you could make that argument with Jalen Brunson for certain, because Jalen Brunson is usually the guy who is, of course, going to be taking the most shots, the guy who's going to be taking the shots in the closing minutes in the close game. You know what I mean? If he doesn't shoot 0 for 7 from 3, I feel like we probably win that game. Even just 1 or 2 threes from him can get the rest of the team going. You know what I mean? So looking at that, I think Brunson is the guy to step up a little bit. Obviously he did great in the paint. I love seeing that. That's his bread and butter. He does it all the time. I love seeing that. Just want to see that 3-ball fall. I don't want to see 0 for 7 from 3 or 1 for 9 type shooting performances. And Brunson knows that. He had a quote after the game. He said he played terrible, and he knows he played terrible, and he needs to just be better. He's been pretty accountable all year about how he's played, and he's still doing that right now in the playoffs. And he's had that leadership mentality of we can't take our foot off the gas. We got to play better. There are things we need to improve on. That's what I like to see out of that. So I want to see him translate that onto the court with hitting those threes or hitting those big shots. Whatever the case is. So he's my guy to watch for. I don't know if you agree with me on that, but I do think Brunson is the main guy to watch for. Obviously Julius Randle's availability, like you said, it's uncertain. We don't know if he's going to play in game 2. We thought he was going to play in game 1, but apparently he wasn't able to go. It happens. He did twist his ankle pretty bad, so hopefully he heals up and hopefully he feels better enough for game 2, because the Knicks are going to need him. So I guess that'll be my next question to you. Do you how important just is Julius Randle's presence to this team right now? I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, but I kind of want to go a little more in depth about it, because I do think it is a key difference to the rest of this series. So what do you think about that?
No, I think you're 100% right about the situation with Jalen Brunson and shooting from 3, right? You need him to hit those shots from 3. He is, we've gotten reliable 3-point shooting from him all year, and if you don't have him in the postseason, that's a huge loss for his spacing. The talent level on this team hasn't changed, right? Josh Hart didn't have a great shooting performance from 3. He went 0 for 4, I believe. That does not make Josh Hart a bad shooter. Jalen Brunson did not have a great shooting performance from 3. That does not make him a bad shooter. It just means he didn't shoot well in game 1. Take those shots in game 2. I guarantee you, if everyone on that team was allowed to take the same shots from 3 that they did in game 1, I think you might actually get an actually pretty good shooting performance in that same game. If you re-simulated that, obviously. And again, not saying that you can, wins and losses are determined by, whether, if you re-simulate the game, it'll go better for you or not. The Knicks lost game 1. Definitively, they did not win game 1. They did not play well enough to win game 1. They took open shots and they did not make them. You should lose a game if you do that. But I feel confident in the talent on this roster to rebound. I also feel confident in the personalities and the guys in that locker room to rebound. This team has gone through ups and downs. This team has faced adversity multiple times throughout the season. This team has gone through about as much as you can go through for a team. They were awful in the first month of the season, right? Everyone was writing them off. There was no reason to believe in that team, it felt like, at certain points. And they turned it around. They were a team that couldn't close out in the fourth quarter for most of the winter, right? Until they got Josh Hart. You think of that disaster, that nightmare game that I wish I could forget against Dallas, where, you're up big, not a lot of time left. You got like a 99% chance to win the game, and you just blow it, right? It's shot after shot, poor decision after poor decision. A game that the Knicks should have won, they didn't win. It feels like that is in the past for them, and that they've gotten better as the season's gone on. RJ Barrett has had, I'm going to say this again now. I get it. We can have discussions about RJ Barrett's fit on this team in the summer, fine, but he's not hurting himself by having a good postseason. I'll tell you that, right? Him figuring out his shot in the postseason, realizing, hey, I can't hit threes right now, so I'm just going to drive to the paint. That's going to help him. That's going to help his future on this team. That's going to help this team. Obi Toppin going from a guy that I genuinely was like, hey, maybe you should just give McBride's minutes to him because McBride can provide you defense, to, all right, Randle's out and he's not playing too bad. He's, again, 36% from 3 on 11 attempts is better than what I expect from Obi Toppin. He shot 7 for 15 from the floor and gave you 18 points. You can't be mad about that. 18 points and 8 rebounds. What am I going to sit here and be mad about? That's a good performance. He's gone out and had a pretty strong postseason. End of the day, you feel like the talent on the roster is there. The personalities on the rosters are there. They have a next man up mentality. It doesn't matter who they lose. They will have someone step up. It's just a matter of them executing the game plans that they've had all year. I know that a lot of the blame at times goes to Thibodeau, at least early in the season, and I'm no better than that. I was one of the people just blaming Thibodeau for everything. But I feel like he's put this team in a position to win. I felt like in that game, I don't think he did much to hurt the team at all. I feel like all postseason, he's staggered the minutes well. He's given them offensive sets and defensive possessions for them to go out and take advantage of, and the players just didn't execute. That happens, right? If the postseason went perfectly for the Knicks, we wouldn't have gone to 5 games against the Cavs. We would be sitting here talking about how we're undefeated in the postseason, right? But that's not how the playoffs work, unfortunately. You're going to have days where you lose. You're going to have days where things look bleak. But end of the day, it's just about execution, right? I feel like you can agree with me here. It's just about executing. You have the talent, you have the players, you have the shot creation, you have the open shots, you have the defensive personnel. You just need to get Randle back, and I don't even want to say you just need to get Randle back. You just need to hit those shots. You would have won that game if you hit those shots. So, for my big takeaway from my hey, this team needs to do X in game 2. Hit your open shots. That's really it. You hit your open shots. You play the same game you had defensively. Maybe some marginal improvements on the rebounding side of the ball, and you're going to win this game. And you're going to win game 2. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. I mean, they definitely could have just won that game if they just shot the ball better. And like I was saying before, I do think not having Randle does make a big difference a little bit. I know some people are going to be like, oh, it doesn't matter because Randle hasn't been shooting the ball well, blah, 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 blah. His presence, though, does make a difference because like you mentioned earlier, he's aggressive. He's willing to take every shot he could possibly take. He's not afraid to shoot the ball. And when he gets going, we've seen when he gets going, oh man, he is tough to stop. We've seen it against, Minnesota early in the year. We saw it against Miami when he hit the game winner. We've seen it a couple times this year where he is just unstoppable. And, having Randle out there too also helps with the rebounding game. People forget that Julius Randle was one of the best rebounders in the NBA this year. He averaged 10 rebounds a game. That's not an accident. He is a good rebounder. Maybe on the defensive side, things can be touched up a little bit. But the fact that he was, in the first round, doing what he could do despite playing with an ankle injury. I know he didn't play well in the first round, but he played with an ankle injury, and in game 5 he looked really good in the first half, and then he hurt his ankle again. We didn't see him again. We still have yet to see him back on the floor, but he started to look like he was getting it back a little bit. He was doing all that while playing on a bum ankle, which is a good sign to see. It's a testament to his, his workhorse mentality, his, willingness to just go out there and try to do whatever he can to help the team win in desperate times like this, where you're in the playoffs and you got to win basically every game you can possibly win. I like that about him. I know some Knicks fans are not high on Randle's leadership or his, his on-court, tantrums or whatever. Not saying all that stuff is acceptable, of course. You don't want on-court tantrums and all that. You want to keep things smoothly, chemistry-wise. But sometimes when you're passionate about the game, it happens. You lose your cool and you get mad about stuff that isn't going your way because you want to win games. And that's what Julius Randle wants to do. He wants to win games. I feel like just with his aggressiveness and, like I said, his workhorse mentality, his willingness to do anything he can to help the team win, I think the Knicks were missing that in game 1. They didn't really seem like they just seemed lackadaisical at times. There were too many times I noticed, the Knicks kind of were just settling for long threes, weren't really looking to create good shots or find good looks in the paint if the shots weren't falling. They were just hoping a three would fall and nothing was falling. And again, they had good looks. I can't hate on it if they're taking good shots, but I can criticize it a little bit if it's not falling and they're continuing to do it, because then you're just burying yourself at that point. And that's what they did in game one. The shots weren't falling. The shots weren't falling from the start of the game onward. It's not like they were hitting them at one point and then it got cold. No, they were cold from three from the start of the game to the very end of the game. Sometimes you got to make an adjustment. They didn't make an adjustment. Seemed like they were kind of missing that extra, that fire or that extra mentality a little bit. They kind of were just lackadaisical. It didn't really seem like I'm not saying they weren't trying. They were definitely trying, and they definitely played hard. But it just felt like they were missing something. You felt Randle's presence on the court. You felt that. You could feel he wasn't out there. So that's my takeaway on it. I do think Randle is really important to this series. I think he's going to make a big difference. If he doesn't play in game 2, I feel like I have a bad feeling we could be in for another rough night. Not saying that the other guys can't turn it around and step up. I'm not saying that they're going to shoot 7 for 34 from 3 again. I don't think that's going to happen again. But I do think you're missing something when you don't have Randle out there. What do you think about that?
I definitely agree. Look, if you're a Knicks fan questioning whether Julius Randle matters to his team or not, look up please just look at his stat sheet. I know that people are going to say, watch the games. You clearly don't watch the games if you think Julius Randle doesn't help this team. Look at the stat sheets. Look at the film. Look at the tape. Look at how this team plays with Julius Randle. Look at the aggressiveness he has. You mentioned it. It's not really lazy, but more so just lost, right? And you know what? Again, Julius Randle may take some bad shots at times, or he may force action. But Julius Randle is, again, not scared to shoot. And that's something that, not saying a lot of the guys on the team are scared to shoot, but a lot of the guys on the team haven't been number one options in their past, or B, are just not experienced enough to say, all right, I have the ball. I am open for this three. I'm going to take this shot. Sometimes they're a little too committed to trying to make the right basketball play and play team basketball. This is Julius freaking Randle, okay? Julius freaking Randle, the team leader in points per game, and a two-time All-Star in the last 3 years. An excellent shooter from three this year, considering the volume. I know the percentage is pretty league average, but considering the volume, an excellent shooter for this team. A great scorer. You mentioned it. He brings intensity. I get it. Sometimes it boils over into tantrums, right? I understand, but it's intensity that this team needs. He's a leader in the locker room. He's a leader on this team. I think every single guy in the Knicks will tell you behind closed doors, not to the media, behind closed doors, that Julius Randle is a big part of what this team is doing. If you don't want to listen to the guys on the team, if you don't want to listen to the numbers, if you don't want to listen to the facts, then you're just lost. I think you're right. I think I know I don't really do this enough, but I appreciate that you did this. Just hammering the point home that he freaking matters, man. This dude matters to this team. This dude matters to your chances of winning in the postseason. You can't sit back and say, it's fine. He wasn't playing great in the Cavs series, so it's fine. The production that you get from Randle during the regular season affected your ability to get to this position. You are not the 5 seed right now without Julius Randle. You would have faced the Sixers in the first round, and no disrespect to the Knicks, but the Sixers are a better team than the Knicks. You probably lose that series. We're probably just talking about, again, the draft, the offseason, the post-mortem, whatever you want to call it. We're not talking about basketball right now. We're not talking about games ahead of us. We're talking about next year. And I don't want to talk about next year right now. I want to talk about right now. I want to be able to talk about the next postseason series. I want to be able to talk about games 2, 3, 4, 5, hopefully talking about wins. I don't want to sit here and we've done, how many times have you had to, go on Twitter or go on social media or, it's a random day and man, you're looking for next year. Every Knicks fan is tired of it, right? And Julius Randle is a big part of why we're not doing that right now. So if you're in the comment section, if you're on social media and you're typing away and you're like, Julius Randle stinks or whatever, I don't know what type of basketball you're watching. I don't know what you're watching because I think most reasonable Knicks fans know this dude's big for this team. Literally, I mean, he's 6'9" too, so that definitely helps, especially with the Knicks establishing they can beat the Heat in the paint. You just need some threes to fall, but Randle can take advantage of that. So, end of the day, Randle's huge for this team. I don't want to get ahead of myself and make it seem like Julius Randle versus not Julius Randle means life or death for the Knicks, but I'm implying it because it could end up meaning life, or it could end up meaning your season ends because of no Julius Randle. But with that being said, game 2, obviously there's some stuff we don't know. So it's a little bit of like a hesitancy with score predictions here. But I think personally, I've got the Knicks winning game 2. I think they know it's a must-win game. I think they're going to hit their threes. I anticipate that Randle, I'm guessing Randle's going to be, I'm guessing he's going to be available, but even if he's not, I still feel I'm going to pick them to win. I've got them dropping 116 points. I've got the Heat scoring 110. I've got the Knicks edging them out just by the slimmest of margins. A big 3 here, a big 3 there in the fourth quarter ends up being the deciding factor for the Knicks. 116 to 110, Knicks win. Tie up the series, go to South Beach. What do you got for game 2?
Right, so first off, we obviously don't want to think too far ahead and assume Randle's going to play Game 2 because, quite frankly, I think a lot of us thought Randle was for sure playing in Game 1. Turned out he was not playing in Game 1, so clearly we can't predict that at this point, so we kind of just got to go with what we know so far. And right now what we know so far is that Randle might not play Game 2. We don't know yet. We'll find out probably tomorrow or whenever the next game is, but regardless, for a final score, I feel like the Knicks win this game for sure. I do think the Knicks win this game. I don't think they're going to let themselves drop 2 games at home at the Garden. I don't think they're going to do that. Like we've talked about before, they have the faces, they have the personalities, they have the mentality to come out and win the games and improve and just be better. Be a better basketball team, right? And, I think if Randle does play, I feel like that'll make a difference, You kind of have that energy back. You have that intensity back. You have the aggressiveness back. You have all those things that you were missing in Game 1 back on the floor. I'm not saying Julius Randle is a perfect player. I know some people might think that Randle isn't perfect or Randle hasn't been doing good. I know. And I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying he's the only guy on this team that matters. No, we have a bunch of guys on the team that matter. Every single one of them matters. Every single one of them needs to play an important role. But not having Randle does make a big difference. So we need to hope he's ready for Game 2. And I think we're seeing that in Game 1. Like I said, you just felt his presence not being there. You felt it. Whichever way you wanted to feel it, you could tell that they were missing that. So hopefully he's back for Game 2. For a final score prediction, I say the Knicks will win this game like 110-103. And I give it a 7-point lead because I do think they're going to come out and play much more aggressive defensively. I think they'll shoot the ball better. I will hope that they shoot the ball better. 7 for 34 is not acceptable. Hopefully they have a good 3-point shooting game because they've quite honestly yet to have one this entire postseason. I think now is the time to turn that around and actually get some good shots up and make them. So I feel like they'll win this game by a decent margin. Do I think it'll be a blowout? No, I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I do think the Knicks will be in control of this game. They're not gonna let themselves go down 2-0 at home. They're not gonna let themselves do that. I don't see this Knicks team doing that. This Knicks team is different than it was in the past. They look to win. They play hard. They play aggressive. They play from the opening tip to the final buzzer every single time. That's my score prediction. Do you have any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you're right about the shooting part. You feel like they can't shoot 7 from 34 from 3 again. But you know what? I think 110 to 103 actually is a little bit more realistic than 116 to 110, just based on the fact these two teams are gonna battle it out, and these are very gritty teams. So it's not like this is like a Kings Warriors situation where it's like these are high flying offenses. This is more of like they make the right basketball plays type of team, a little more like gritty nitty, all that stuff. But with that being said, I have a good feeling with this team. I'm sorry. For as much as this team has, been through this year, I'm just not ready to, I'm never going to be ready to quit on this team. This team could be down 3-0. I'll say, yeah, they have a good chance. There's a good chance they don't advance. It's a very good chance they don't advance, but I'm never counting them out unless they lose 4 games in the series, I'm not counting them out. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for listening to today's video. We hope you guys enjoyed today's video. It's a little bit of a longer one, but there's a lot to talk about. So we appreciate you guys' continued support. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you guys think. Drop your score predictions for Game 2. I don't care if you're a Knicks fan. I don't care if you're a Heat fan. I don't care if you don't watch the NBA. Let us know what you guys think, right? We want to get all your perspectives in. And, of course, you guys can check out our different social medias. We have an Instagram, a TikTok, and, of course, a Twitter page. You can check out our personal Twitter accounts. They'll be above our heads. And, of course, you guys can make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to turn on post notifications so you guys know we're coming out with the next video. I'm Ryan Garcia. That's Dylan Backer. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.